We do it every Wednesday night, so the calendar and the clock is telling me it's 8 o'clock on Wednesday night Eastern time. So here we are talking SEC football here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Great to see everybody in the live chat. We will get to your comments very soon. Want to let you know that Palmer Toms from Dogs 247 Sports is headed our way in just about 10 or 15 minutes to talk Georgia, Florida. That is pretty much the game of the week in the SEC, no question. Nationally, Clemson, Notre Dame's right there as well. But Georgia, Florida for SEC East dominance and supremacy. 3:30 Eastern time on Saturday in Jacksonville. Lon Phillips Sullivan from LSU Odyssey will be joining us to talk LSU football after that debacle of a performance on the Plains against Auburn, losing 48-11. And then Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama with the Tide at number 2. Some rankings, number 1 in the nation, Alabama. And Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama will join us at 9 p.m. Eastern time. We have sent out an invitation to a number of other SEC contributors and hope that we see them as well. Until Palmer gets on board, I will certainly take your comments, your questions, and certainly will be sifting through the live chat. We are here every Wednesday night again at 8 o'clock Eastern time. And this is just the culmination of a big day here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We went live at 2 o'clock Eastern time with Ohio State Live. That's every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern time, so lock it in for that. Florida State Live at 6 every Wednesday night, and that's 6 o'clock Eastern time. And then we have had so many excellent discussions with writers across the nation, the latest of which being Jackie Franchuli from All Gators on SI.com. We talked to Dan Mullen, the Gator situation on the virus list, and of course the big matchup with Georgia. Those videos will be released. Actually, we released the Dan Mullen conversation, villain or victim Dan Mullen, just a couple hours ago. So check out that video, as well as a conversation with Michelle Gardner on Arizona State football. The Sun Devils open their Pac-12 season against USC at 9 o'clock in the morning local time on Saturday. Had some fun with that one with Michelle Gardner, Arizona State, and USC. Also, my goodness, what else did we talk about? We had Steve Helwick on the line talking Texas football. The Longhorns have a date against West Virginia. Loser most likely eliminated from the Big 12 race. And check out those videos. We are running full throttle here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, and we will get you more live streams coming up this week with Miami at 4 and at 7 o'clock tomorrow. Nebraska Live is tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And then as we move our way toward the weekends, plenty of call-in shows and content, instant analysis once we get into Saturday's action. So I'm excited about Clemson, Notre Dame, and this Georgia-Florida game, and really everything from noon on Saturday. So lock it in right here. Please subscribe. Also, hit that bell for the notifications once you subscribe. That way you know when we're going live. And one other thing is, of course, Christmas is coming. And if you're like me, that would not be on your radar. That's not on my radar typically until about December 23rd. But it is for a lot of people months in advance. And it's especially on my radar this year because we've got our Amazon link, our Mark Rogers TV Amazon link. So once you do your Amazon shopping, which I've heard through the grapevine that this Amazon outfit is getting pretty big. So you probably shop there. So if you shop there on Amazon, use our link. It's the same shopping experience. You don't have to spend a penny and don't have to spend a penny more. And help us build the channel here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Without further ado, we check out Palmer Toms and Dogs 247 Sports. Of course, again, as we have been commenting, Palmer, game of the week in the SEC, no doubt about it. Georgia and Florida. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Really excited for this matchup here coming on Saturday between these two SEC East powers. And ultimately, I think this is going to be the game that decides who represents the Eastern Division in Atlanta. for Georgia. Obviously, the setback against Alabama last couple weeks ago, looms large. But I think that if Georgia's going to want to get back to Atlanta and get another chance at Alabama, they're going to have to go through Florida. So it all starts on Saturday for the Bulldogs.
So when we look at this matchup, I think the first thing that comes to mind in regards to comparing the two teams would be, if it swings Florida's way, it's going to be because they're throwing the ball all over the place. Kyle Trask has been extremely efficient. The wide receivers, led by Kyle Pitts, of course, a tight end, but plays like a wide receiver. Kadarius Toney is making moves on everybody in the open field. It's going to be that Florida is too explosive for Georgia, and Georgia's offense, the way it's running right now, won't be able to keep up. What we've seen the last 2 years on the flip side would be that Florida's gotten better and better and better, but Georgia still is more talented and deeper from top to bottom on the roster, and just flat out stronger along the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And especially when we hit the fourth quarter in a close game, Georgia was able to push Florida around. The Gators couldn't balance out their passing attack with any type of threat running the ball, and that's usually not a formula for winning against a good team, having to throw it 50 times and gaining like 25 yards rushing. And then on the flip side, that Georgia was just able to pound and pound and pound, and those talented backs got more room in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think the last 14 games between these two teams has been decided on the ground, and the team that has rushed for more yards has won the game. So I definitely think this one starts in the trenches. And like you said, Georgia has a little bit of an advantage on the offensive and defensive lines this year, and they have in the past. That is definitely going to be tested this Saturday with a banged up defensive line for Georgia, several injuries on the defensive front for the Bulldogs. Starts in the middle with Jordan Davis, Big 99, as Kirby Smart likes to call him. He's been a force in the middle for Georgia. Played a big role in this game last year, stopping that run, and has always played a big role for stopping the run for Georgia. So he goes down last weekend against Kentucky with an elbow injury. It looked like he was going to be out initially, for a couple of weeks. Our sources indicated that he would be out, but Kirby Smart has been really optimistic. I think it'll be interesting to see how much of that is coach speak versus how much of that is realistic. And to see if Davis is able to go in any capacity. It's an elbow injury, so with it being upper body, it's one of those things that you can kind of limit it and protect it when you're playing a football game. It's hard to keep an ankle away from contact, hard to keep a knee away from contact, but when you can put a brace on an elbow, you can protect it a little bit. So I think it'll be interesting to see if he goes. I would not expect him to play. And that becomes even bigger when Georgia is down Julian Rochester in the middle as well. So two big defensive linemen that can play in the middle of that defense for Georgia. And so their depth on the defensive front is certainly going to be tested.
Yeah. So what is the injury count on defense? I heard 5. I heard both starting safeties.
Yeah. So Lewis Seen is going to be back. All indications point to him playing. He left the Kentucky game early as well. Looked like something having to do with a shoulder, possibly. But he has been practicing this week. He's been in a full go jersey, not wearing a black non-contact jersey or anything. So he looks like he'll be ready to go. Georgia will be without All-American safety Richard LeCount, who was involved in a scary automobile accident over the weekend after the win over Kentucky. He was named SEC Defensive Player of the Week with 13 tackles, career high for him against the Wildcats. And then Saturday night, once the team got back to Athens, he was involved in a motorcycle accident. And so that was a scary situation. He was in the ICU for a little bit. He's out. He appears to have concussion and bruised ribs. So likely will be out for a couple of weeks for Georgia, but obviously that's not the priority there with the situation like that. And so good to have Richard back in the building with the team today, and thoughts and prayers are with him. But and on the field, that'll mean that Georgia will be down one of their starting safeties and one of their most veteran players on the defensive side of the ball. So likely it will be Chris Smith stepping up there at safety. He got a lot of the action in the Auburn game when when LeCount went down with the targeting injury, targeting foul. So he was out for the later portion of the first half and all of the second half in that game. So Chris Smith has filled in. He's been making a push for playing time and actually played against Kentucky with Scene out. So, he's a veteran guy, junior, that, has the experience and is definitely capable of leading a defense back there. So Georgia will be without one of their safeties, Quay Walker, who's an inside linebacker, probably a third linebacker for Georgia, but definitely in the rotation. He's been limited. He's been a non-contact jersey. So, we'll see if he gives it a go. Monty Rice, who has been limited with a foot injury, he is a full go. So I would expect him to play. Talking to some of the players today, they told us that Monty gave them a little bit of a speech today, let them know how important this game is. And so, I think when a guy like that, a defensive leader, one of your, presumably one of your team captains at the end of the season, gives a speech like that, you can expect him to give it a go. He gave it a go against Alabama when he was limited. Didn't really look like he was going to play much against Kentucky coming off of the bye and getting a little bit more rest. But when Quay Walker went down, they needed him to step in, and he stepped in and played well in that game. So Georgia's going to be down a couple of defensive guys, but like you said, the depth that they've built up with the recruiting is certainly going to be tested and will be on the forefront today on Saturday.
SEC Live every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We bring on the best bloggers, writers, and broadcasters that you will find in the industry covering SEC football. Palmer Toms joins us on a regular basis. Please check out his work at Dogs 247 Sports. All right, Palmer, it's coming. So
quarterbacks.
Yeah, we're going to talk quarterbacks. Man, you were right on it. Okay. So the way I look at this Kentucky game is that these two teams could still be on the field on Wednesday night for a Saturday game. And I don't know that the Wildcats would still maybe have 3 points on the board. They just weren't going to score against Georgia's defense. They just weren't moving the ball. Joey Gatewood at quarterback. Okay. So it looked like there might have been an opportunity to experiment, and whether that means going in one of two directions. Either one direction would be play multiple quarterbacks, see who looks the best. We don't know what's going on in practice. We don't know. Maybe Stetson Bennett is by far the best quarterback in regards to not just throwing the football, but doing all the other things that a quarterback needs to do to lead the team, to get them in the right play, to make the right decisions. Okay, it's a different position than any other position in so many ways. But there was that opportunity. We know DeJuan Mathis got the first game start, got less than a half, didn't perform well, but still it was less than 2 quarters of play. Carson Beck, I don't know what the deal is with him. I don't know what the deal is necessarily with JT Daniels at this point. So either it could have been an audition for the Florida game, or it could have been Stetson Bennett, let's have you throw more than 13 passes this game and work on the passing game because we're probably going to need it next week.
Yeah, Kirby Smart, was asked specifically about that after the game. I think it was, one of the most, straightforward questions he's received about the quarterback situation all year. And, it was, is Stetson your guy? What is it that you see in Stetson that is, the deciding factor between him and those other guys that you mentioned? And also, how confident are you in the offense? Every week Kirby is going to be asked about the quarterback play and the quarterback situation. And so, he's been asked it every which way that it could have been asked. And this was very straightforward. And, he said, Stetson is our guy. He's said that Stetson is going to continue to be the guy until, one of those guys that you mentioned, be it DeJuan Mathis, JT Daniels, or Carson Beck, steps up and shows that they deserve a shot to be the guy. I don't necessarily agree with him. I would have liked, like you said, an audition type game. I would have liked to see exactly what, DeJuan Mathis could do in a second opportunity, exactly what JT Daniels could do in his first opportunity in his Georgia uniform. So I think that a lot of the fans would agree with me here and, say that they wanted to see someone else. I think, we've seen what Stetson Bennett could do. And and we've seen it in on the highest of stages against Alabama. I think it's pretty clear what Georgia is with Stetson Bennett. And I think, like you said, there was an opportunity to kind of play around with it. But, the danger you run there is you take out Stetson Bennett. Does he lose all of his confidence? And I don't know how much confidence he has left, given the fact that in the last 6 quarters of play, he's thrown 4 interceptions and fumbled the ball several times. Given against Alabama, they were held scoreless in the second half, and only put up 14 points on Saturday against a Kentucky team that's not the best in the league. I think that there's a lot to be desired to see out of this quarterback situation, but ultimately Kirby Smart said that Stetson is the guy, and that they really felt like they didn't have to throw the ball Saturday. You play these games to win. You play to win the game, and you kind of scheme a game the way that it's going to work. With the way that Kentucky was limiting possessions, Georgia only had 8 possessions there. You want to find your way into the end zone, be it throwing, passing, and when the run game was working, Zamir White had a career high carries, turned that into a career high 130 something yards. When that's working and you've got the running backs clicking, another guy that was clicking was James Cook, who had over 100 all-purpose yards for his 2nd straight game. When you've got those guys and you've got that running back room working, I don't see a reason to turn away from it. But I definitely am with you that it would have been interesting to see some of those other guys get a chance, or even see Stetson Bennett air the ball out. Certainly interesting to go from him throwing the ball 40 times against Alabama to 13 times, like you said, against Kentucky. So I think a lot of that has to do with the way that both those games played out. Alabama, they're playing from behind and they've got to go to the air to get some points, whereas this Kentucky game was slower on the ground and really ultimately about eating up clock and getting in the end zone a couple of times that you needed to win the game.
So when looking at Florida's struggles this year on defense, they have flipped the script in regards to having a top 10 or 15 defense during this McElwain, Muschamp, and into Dan Mullen's tenure. And then suddenly this year, they're getting shredded week by week. But then they run up against Missouri, who's been throwing the ball well. They seem to have fixed some issues, made some personnel changes. First touchdown was on special teams or defense for Mizzou. Second touchdown didn't matter. Game was over. So they might have righted some wrongs on defense. So as you look at Florida personnel, as you look at whatever sample size you've been able to see the Gators play, I saw some of the Ole Miss game. I saw them play pretty much every play against Texas A&M. Your thoughts about the Gators and maybe what they bring to the table that might be a little bit different here in 2020 than what it's been the last 2 years?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that Missouri game being better for Florida. They got a couple of guys back that they haven't had all this season. So, I think that when you get a defense like that, that has struggled, and you get a couple of those key players back, that certainly brings some energy to your team, and I think that showed against Missouri. But I do think it's tough to read a defense based on one game, and you look at the larger sample size and they haven't been all that great. So I definitely think this game is going to be interesting to see. Once again, you look at that Georgia-Alabama game and it was strength versus strength, Alabama's offense versus Georgia's defense. That's going to be the case here with Florida and Georgia. And then the weaknesses obviously on the other side of the ball, with Georgia's offense struggling a little bit especially at the quarterback position, and Florida's defense struggling, giving up a bunch of yards. I think it'll be interesting to see how Georgia game plans against former Georgia defensive coordinator Jim McElwain.
So it's Georgia, it's Florida, it's always special.
Excuse me, Todd Grantham.
What's that?
Todd Grantham as the defensive
Todd
coordinator.
Grantham. Been around the conference, of course, coached at Louisville as well. But yeah, it's always a good one between Georgia and Florida, always a huge rivalry. But again, this has been for the SEC Eastern Division, and unless all hell breaks loose in the rest of the season for these two teams, and it's not going to, this is for the division championship and a right to play Alabama in Atlanta. Palmer Tom's on the line. We would encourage you to check out his work at Dogs 247 Sports. And anything that we're missing here, anything of note, anything you find interesting as we get closer to game time, let's see, in less than 3 days.
Yeah, I think, ultimately we touched on it with Georgia's injury situation. That's who Georgia trots out there is going to be the biggest question. And I think a lot of people have been wondering who Georgia's going to trot out there at quarterback all season. I think that one's pretty firm answer, that it's going to be Stetson Bennett, and that, Kirby is pretty set in stone on Stetson being the guy. And so I think, looking at this matchup, it's going to come down to who Georgia can trot out there on defense and can they get the stops that they need. Obviously the struggles against Alabama were very apparent against an explosive offense like that. This is an explosive offense, but it's a different kind of explosive offense. It doesn't have the speed that Alabama has, at least across the board. Kadarius Toney is obviously a very, dynamic player and, quick guy that Florida fans love. It'll be interesting to see who Georgia matches up against him. I would guess it's probably going to be Eric Stokes, but Tyson Campbell is another guy that can match up one-on-one in coverage with the speedster like that. But I think the biggest question is going to be how Georgia matches up against Kyle Pitts, and obviously that becomes even more of a question when you look back at last year's game. Their one answer to Kyle Pitts, and it wasn't much of an answer. They really struggled to guard him in the first half. But when they did guard him well, it was Richard LeCounte on him. So without LeCounte there, they're going to have to get some pressure on the quarterback. They weren't able to do that against Alabama. And, it'll be interesting to see how they can do that without some of their best defensive linemen in the mix. So certainly looking forward to this game. Like we've said several times, I think it's going to decide the East, and should be a great matchup between two great teams on Saturday.
We appreciate everyone's comments and questions in the live chat. I don't see anything else necessarily here for Palmer. A lot on Stetson Bennett. We've addressed the quarterback situation, so we'll let Palmer have the rest of the night off. Palmer, we appreciate you stopping by as always, sir. Georgia, Florida is always a good one. Enjoy the game.
Absolutely. I know we could go on all night about the quarterback situation, so thanks for letting me go.
Oh, we've got another half season to dive into it, regardless of the result on Saturday. So we shall see how that plays out.
Yes, look forward to being back on. Thanks Mark.
Thanks a lot, Palmer. Always appreciated. Palmer Toms, Dogs 247 Sports, our go-to guy in Georgia football. And this is, of course, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And our SEC show that, by your suggestion, your request, we have launched 4 weeks ago. So this is our 4th edition of SEC Live. So we've got SEC Live on Wednesday nights after our Florida State Live show at 6 Eastern. Ohio State Buckeyes at 2 Eastern on Wednesday. Tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Nebraska Live for a second straight week. And people ask me all the time, it's been the case almost every day this week. People ask me, why don't you do a live show on this team or that team? Or what's it going to take for you to do a live show for this particular team? Well, based on the situation we're in regards to a full-time business here, as soon as somebody brings up a sponsor, as somebody is able to bring a sponsor to the table, as was the case with Nebraska, I would love to do a show for any team in college football. I will do a weekly show for any team in college football. All you need to do is get us a sponsor or lead us in that direction, and I will certainly talk to them. And so just consider anybody that makes sense for a college football show. College football apparel comes to mind first and foremost. How are we not the perfect target audience for college football apparel? There you go. All right. The LSU Tigers with a rough go that I did not expect to see. I was expecting to see a down to the wire game that fell right in place, similar to what the Vegas line was, which was LSU was a 2 or 3 point favorite against the Auburn Tigers and so forth. So the only way to find out exactly what happened in this one is to go to Lon Phillip Sullivan with LSU Odyssey. Lon, you've got all the answers, don't you?
Well, I got some. Wow. I was on your show a week ago, and I said I had no concerns We were against Bo Nix. We were going to show Bo Nix who was the SEC Freshman of the Year, all of that. And Bo Nix rammed it right down my face. 381 total yards, 81 on the ground. He ran through Jacoby Stevens for a touchdown with a perfect angle. LSU offensively, though, we knew we were suspect defensively. 335 passing yards per game, 9.9 yards per completion. Very, very, that's a condemning stat. 143 rushing yards per game. But offensively, 1.2 rushing yards in the entire game. 1.9 by half. 32 rushing yards from 27 carries. Ty Davis-Price only received the ball 3 times. We couldn't sustain a drive. I wouldn't say it was through lack of play calling. Auburn were just making great plays. We were making horrible errors when we shouldn't have been. Terrace Marshall starts the game dropping 2 passes. It was the worst type of start you could possibly have. But once again, LSU's defense played good for about a quarter and a half there. Still 7-0 with 7-8 minutes left in the second quarter. They weren't breaking contain. They were making great tackles on the edge, and then suddenly they just, once those turnovers happened, once TJ Finley was swallowed up, the pick 6, then the fumble that led to the touchdown from the 3 or 5-yard line, whatever it was, then they just collapsed. You saw an LSU team give up. And it was unspeakable. LSU fans were horrified. I think more than anything, there wasn't anger. I think there was just complete disappointment, complete just sadness. Like the guts had been ripped out of you. LSU's defensive line didn't even sack Bo Nix once in the game. It was just, it was shocking. It was unbelievable.
All right, Lon, we'll dive into this. John Emery, highly touted back. Also, Chris Curry coming out of high school. Both of those guys. And I'll throw in Tyrion Davis-Price. All 3 of those guys, very highly touted running backs coming out of high school. Emery at 9 carries, 21 yards. Curry, 3 carries, 8 yards. And Davis-Price, 3 carries, no yards. Again, yeah, the running game. Apparently, offensive line issues.
Oh, yeah. I thought those had been cleaned up, but I think we just found out, once we played that higher echelon of competition, which Auburn is, forget about their record. They proved me wrong. Gus Malzahn proved me wrong. He has pulled the rabbit out of the hat on a number of occasions. I just didn't want to give him some credit. I just wanted to talk some smack. They must have been watching us, Mark, because they were motivated. And here's the thing that I come to find out. They called a timeout in the 4th quarter, Mark, to set up a passing play when they were up by 30 or something points. That tells me everything. LSU, we knew we had a target on our back. We knew we had to dial it up to really protect ourselves this season after what we did to everybody in 2019. They're extra motivated to kick our ass, and they did. They handed it to us. And the rushing game, the offensive line, we found out that I don't think that is an SEC offensive line right now. You cannot say that. You cannot. How can you argue that? In some of the games, it was just absolutely mind-blowing how we couldn't run the football. Against Mississippi State, an absolutely horrible team we've come to find out, Mississippi State. We couldn't even run the ball against them. It's shocking. The offensive line has some depth problems. There's been some issues regarding some injuries, some COVID-19. Half of them were wiped out through COVID for most of when we could actually practice. So a lot of that precious practice time was lost for some of these guys. But I won't make any excuses. That was an awful, horrendous offensive line showing. And James Craig knows it. He's going to be hitting that tape. And Tell the Truth Monday was I'm sure, pretty harsh.
Got Lon Philip Sullivan on the line from LSU Odyssey. The defending national champions taking it on the chin against Auburn, 48-11. It's been a rough season for LSU football. We didn't think that we would necessarily hear either of these 2 names in a competitive game, Max Johnson and TJ Finley. Do we know? And of course, we got a bye week coming up, so there's a lot of time, a lot of practice time and evaluation before Alabama. But do we have any idea, or do you have a preference of what the quarterback direction is going forward?
We've heard today from Orgeron that Brennan is finally back to practicing, which is great news. We don't know what condition he's in, though. I prefer Miles Brennan over the freshman, of course. But if it had to be one of the freshmen, you got to go with Max Johnson at this point. That's the only way we can beat Alabama. I think his feet require, they supply something that is extra special. And he put some extra sauce on that touchdown pass to Kayshon Boutte as well. That was a really nice pass. It is so unknown and uncertain what we'll get from these freshmen, because you saw the hot from TJ Finley, then you saw the cold, you saw the uncertain. I can't really put Auburn on TJ Finley, though. That was just, but it is a confidence killer for him, you'd have to say. And then Max Johnson came into that game, and you got to say he probably babysat that game. But at the same time, I think he ended that game with more confidence. He finished that game probably in a better standing than TJ Finley, sadly. It was just, the offensive line was just, there was no escape. And Max Johnson, though, he can provide that escape if there's just no alternative.
So at 2-3,
Yes.
we're halfway through a 10-game season. Do you have any concerns that just kind of the season loses its purpose, the team loses its mission? You can't group everyone together. We're talking about 100 players. Every individual is different in regards to incentive and motivation and internal will. But do you have some concerns that the rest of the season just becomes kind of a lost cause?
I do, in kind of a different way than many people see it. I think a lot of the members of the coaching staff can see the lack of motivation, the laughing on the sideline when we're losing 48-11, that type of stuff. And whether they address it or not, whether they clean it up or not, that still happened. And Orgeron he knows this is basically, we're starting back at square one as a program in 2017, and he's building another championship run here. And 2021, that's going to be the target year, with a bunch of freshmen coming in that are really hot, with a bunch of, we're still going to have Derek Stingley, still going to have Miles Brennan. And after the way they've played, we probably will have Jacoby Stevens, Jabril Cox, and a few of those other guys, because I think they'll take that extra year of eligibility, because they did themselves no goodwill with these performances. LSU, I can see them finishing 6-4, but at the same time, I hear a lot of people, they can't see us winning a game. I'm not that cynical. I think LSU can turn this around, but we have to find out where the disconnect is with this team first. That's number one. Before we can talk about, we got to beat Alabama. That is the thing. If we can beat Alabama, we can save the season. Before I'm even going to go there, Mark, I need to find out where the disconnect is with this team. I may be a fan, but I'm also a journalist, and I'm also a realist. Something is wrong with this team. I need to find out what it is. I'm close. And I think it's revolving around certain things that are distractions, not only to the players, but to the coaching staff. And I think Coach Orgeron is aware of that now, and he's seen that, and he's starting to really buckle down and shut that down. He's evaluating. He's constantly evaluating. He said that he won't make any decisions until the end of the season, and that's in regards to coaches like Bo Pelini. That hiring is been maligned, and now his firing is being called for, but from all angles, all sides. We have to find out where that disconnect is. And until LSU does, they won't win a game. Because here's the thing. The SEC doesn't matter who it is. Sam Pittman's Arkansas, as we found out. People were giving Sam Pittman so much crap before the season. How people don't even know who he is. And it just shows you, in the SEC, if you show up and you take an opponent for granted, they will kick your teeth down your throat. They will steal it from you in your own house. They will. It is sad. It is sad what we're seeing with LSU, but there's a lot of great opportunity here. The end of one chapter always begats another. through the ashes of those 2016, 2017 teams, the loss to Troy, LSU began anew because Coach Orgeron, if there's one thing he's great at, even his biggest haters have to admit this. He is great at building a program. Look at what he did with USC, and he was even part of the Miami project. And then LSU, that's 3 of the greatest college football teams of all time. He can do it again at LSU because we have the players, we have the talent, we have the resources, we do have the coaching staff. That's the thing. People are ripping on this coaching staff, giving them a lot of crap, but I don't think they see what's behind the scenes, because when you talk to recruits like Mason Smith, who he knows what he's seeing. He was at the Mississippi State game. He loves Pelini. So what can you say about that? These high numbered recruits, Sage Ryan, they're coming to LSU because they want to play in Pelini's defense. I think they understand the problems that are happening on the field more innately than some of the players that are on the team right now. I think what's gone on at LSU with the opt-outs and all of the distractions, it's been a drama fest. The NCAA violations even came in, and that just went to the wayside because there was so much other things happening. There's opt-outs again. But it also shows you that with all these opt-outs, Jamar Chase, Tyler Shelvin, Kerry Vincent, LSU still actually had a very good team. A very, very good team that could at least maybe finish 7-3, something like that. But the thing is, you see that on 75, 80% of the plays in each game. When you go back and you watch the film, actually, I'd even say 85, 90% of the plays, you see great effort, you see great pursuit, you see everything's executed perfectly. But then in these 15% of these plays that win or lose you football games, LSU has just completely filled their pants, failed to wash or change them at halftime, went back out there, got more crusty, literally walked around and just let that fester. And Orgeron he's not going to let that fester anymore. Orgeron's putting his foot down. I've seen the evidence of it. I can't really go into what I've seen or what I've heard, but I know he has. Orgeron's going to turn this around. LSU fans need to believe in this guy. This guy is not just a one-year wonder. His past proves that.
So it's also surprising the effort or lack thereof and the score differential against Auburn, considering what happened the week before. So LSU gets off to this awful start against Mississippi State. The season goes south pretty quickly with 2 losses in the first 3 games. But South Carolina comes to town. There was a lot of talk of an upset there. South Carolina was coming off a win against Auburn. LSU takes care of business, and that game turns into a rout. So you're thinking, at least I was, that maybe LSU's adjusted itself in regards to a lot of teams come into a season with championship aspirations. And then when they're knocked down a couple pegs, they either go off the rails for the rest of the season or they readjust and think, okay, we can't fulfill our goals, but we're going to play for pride. And then if they can get that one game under their belt to feel good about themselves, gain their confidence back. And it seemed like that might be the game that they turned in against South Carolina, beating down the Gamecocks with almost 50 points on the board, or whatever the score was, something in that range.
52, yeah.
52, okay. It's like 52-24, 52-17, whatever it was. That I thought, okay, I didn't expect necessarily that LSU would win the rest of its games, but I thought, okay, we're seeing a team where these young players that have had to step in for all this NFL talent that's left now have 4 games under their belt. They're starting to find themselves, starting to mesh as a team. The roster's still extremely talented, so we're going to see LSU finish out the season fairly strong. I don't know how many games they're going to win, but yeah, to your point, I thought 6 or 7, and then they turn around, they go to Auburn, a game that I picked them to win, and again, I wasn't surprised that they lost, but I was guessing, this is going to be a 27-24 game. And obviously it was not close in any such way. So Lon, you hit on the name that's getting most of the blame. And I'll throw it up here because somebody's thrown it in the live chat, and that's Bo Pelini.
Yep.
So Bo Pelini, a guy that was so successful his first go around at LSU, had a decent run at Nebraska. People's thoughts are that he was scheming defense against a completely different style offense in college football 10 to 15 years ago. And here we are in 2020, and maybe he's not equipped to get the job done now.
You know, those opinions, I always thought, oh, that's not valid throughout the offseason. Now it's looking more valid than ever, and I have to admit, they're correct so far. Pelini, it's up to him to prove them wrong at this point. You can't really defend, oh, well, you won a ring in 2007. That was a completely different era, a different world, a different time, especially at LSU. I mean, we hadn't really had the taste of winning consecutively, you know, like that. 2003 was really the first taste. And then do it in 2007, which Pelini was a part of, and a huge, huge piece of, you know, that kind of began that dynasty. But then he was gone. Pelini coming back into the picture, he hasn't coached in the SEC or even a major conference since I think it was 2014. He's been at Youngstown State in Division II, and Youngstown State hasn't done particularly well when he was the head coach there even. And so I gotta wonder what's going on. If that's the disconnect, if these players won't play for Bo Pelini, if there's something political going on, which I strongly doubt, because LSU's been pretty transparent about what's going on when players want to speak out or something's happening. They just say it if you follow their social media, and the coaches just, you know, there's no problem with there. I don't know what it is, but one thing I do know from all this disconnect and all these rumors with Pelini, the only thing I can really think of is from a quote Coach Orgeron gave just today talking about Bo Pelini. It's very interesting in my opinion. He was saying, Bo, you know, he's being positive. He's making adjustments. We did corrections. We watched the tape together on Sunday. We watched every play, me and Bo, and then Bo went the next day and watched every play on Tell the Truth Monday with the defense. But in the midst of that quote, he said, he understands I'm the coach here. Orgeron said that's a direct quote. He understands I'm the coach here, in reference to Bo Pelini. Does that mean that maybe Bo Pelini has been a little more tyrannical, has been trying to call the shots, has been trying to usurp Orgeron? I don't know. It's something Orgeron said. It just seemed out of place there. He understands I'm the coach here. I don't really know why he needed to assert his authority there. Everyone knows Orgeron's the leader of this program, and that's unquestioned. So I just wonder where the disconnect is with LSU's defense, because it's happening again and again and again. And I'm really worried about Alabama, gotta say. If we play with it's beyond the coaches at this point. The players need to have the pride to go out there, whether they don't like the coach, whether they like the coach. They went there because they believed in Coach Orgeron. This program, I believe in Coach Orgeron. Everybody believes in Coach Orgeron attached to LSU if you're a real fan, if you know what you're actually seeing here. The players believe in Orgeron. I don't know if they believe in Pelini, but whether they believe in Pelini or not, they need to be going out there and representing the purple and gold. And I've got a direct message to LSU players right now. LSU players, we cannot lose to Bama like we lost to Auburn. We cannot give up with that type of lack of desire, because Alabama are ready to make an example of us. We stole Sage Ryan from them, they feel, on Saban's birthday. He didn't come out of the cake like Marilyn Monroe for Saban's birthday. They feel like LSU has been arrogant the last year. How we've touted the national championship and our defeat of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. I think they're ready to make an example of us. They're super motivated for this game. They are licking their chops, especially Najee Harris. And LSU, if you're not ready for this, if you're not up for this, you will be steamrolled in the worst way possible that we won't even be able to stomach as fans, as people who admire LSU, even if you're just an admirer from a distance, you might turn away in disgust because of the violence. Hide your children's eyes from this type of a performance. LSU players, please show the pride, the desire, the strength, the energy, and the reason you came to LSU in the first place.
Your plea makes sense because you would think, okay, Alabama is capable of some serious damage here. Who is the one team? What is the one team out there that they would like better than anybody else to make an example of? Well, it's obviously the team that is number one, a chief rival every year, regardless. A team that, number two, beat them head-to-head last year, and number three, won an SEC and a national championship, something that they believe is rightfully theirs.
Yes, and I think Saban especially, they're going to have no problem running up the score on us. They want to kick us while we're down, and Orgeron's not going to let that happen, not on his watch. And I think this is the game where you're going to see, Devontae Lee finally out there. You're going to see Josh White finally out there. You're going to see all these players who should have been playing a few games ago, getting in the game. Some of these unknowns, some of these freshmen, some of these guys who've been in the shadows, Philip Webb. But these guys are extremely talented athletes who have the speed, the side-to-side speed on defense that we should have been utilizing a long time ago. Maybe we wouldn't be in this position if we had. I want to see if Pelini has the stones to actually throw some of these guys out there. Does he have the stones to play Josh White, Philip Webb, Antoine Sampah, Devontae Lee especially? That's the thing I haven't seen from Pelini is he just kept the same guys out there. Micah Baskerville, I don't know how well he's going to hold up against Najee Harris. And this is just very, very interesting times at LSU, Mark, because Alabama, they're motivated. We really need to hunker down here, figure out what the problem is. There needs to be complete transparency, honesty between the players, everybody in that program, the coaching staff especially. Do they care more about recruiting or do they care more about winning games? We need to find that out.
Lon Philip Sullivan helps us out with LSU coverage here on a regular basis here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Lon, we appreciate you stopping by. Know that it's difficult to talk about another loss, but hey, you can always think back to 2019 anytime the pain gets to be too much.
Well, here's the thing, Mark. I want to finish this on a happy note because I believe in this. What we're doing on the recruiting trail is actually building another championship team here. I believe in that fully. Garrett Nussmeier is an absolutely brilliant quarterback. Race John Davis at linebacker is exactly what we need. Greg Penn, Naquan Brown, Landon Jackson, Sage Ryan now filling that gap at safety and at nickel, especially a place where we just can't cover anybody. We got receivers like Jack Besh coming in, Matthew Langlois, corner. We're stacking up the defensive line. Hopefully we can pull in Tristan Lee because Tristan Lee would be starting from day one. He's that good. He's that physical. He's that imposing. This 2021 LSU team could be a return to the 2019 greatness. And it's hard to say that right now with what we're seeing, but I believe in the future here at LSU. I believe in what Orgeron's building.
Lon Philip Sullivan, LSU Odyssey. Thank you so much, Lon. Always appreciate you stopping by.
Go Tigers, Mark. Thank you.
All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the SEC each and every week. We are going to have a conversation here in a couple minutes with Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. I will honor everybody's comments and questions in the live chat. I saw something concerning. There it is. I threw it right on the screen. Dependent Fanatic asking about whether the SEC will get a second team in over Cincinnati. Well, there are all sorts of variables in play there. I believe that Cincinnati needs to go undefeated against the schedule that they play, which is a pretty formidable schedule, and it's an extremely formidable schedule within the group of five play with UCF and Memphis and SMU and on down the road, Tulsa as well. They still have three challenging games to Cincinnati with Houston, UCF, and Tulsa's coming up at the end of the year for them, and of course a conference championship game. So a second SEC team. So we basically have 3 teams in play. We've got Florida, we've got Georgia, we've got Texas A&M. They all have 1 loss. Texas A&M has the worst score loss in getting obliterated by Alabama 52-24. And from about late second quarter on, the game was over. Georgia gave Alabama a much more competitive game. The score differential was similar at the end, 41-24, but it was a much closer game. Florida, of course, lost to Texas A&M. So the best route for the SEC would be for Georgia or Florida to win decidedly against the other tomorrow. So let's say Georgia wins big against Florida tomorrow. Regardless of how they win, a big win would help the cause. But regardless, the winner of the Georgia-Florida game goes on and upsets Alabama in the SEC championship game. Therefore, you've got Alabama at 9-1. You've got the SEC champion at 9-1, whether that be Georgia or Florida. You could have a 9-1 Texas A&M team. Wouldn't that be something? Here's your scenario. If Florida beats Georgia, goes on to win the SEC championship game, then you've got Florida 9-1, Alabama 9-1. Well, actually, with the conference championship win, Florida's 10-1, Alabama's 10-1. Texas A&M would seem to be a non-factor at 9-1. But they actually beat Florida head-to-head. That would be some scenario. So I think an SEC second team has a huge opportunity, but they're going to have to beat Alabama. Georgia's already lost. Florida's already lost. The key loss for the SEC in trying to get a second team in was having Florida lose to Texas A&M. Otherwise, Florida could have gone to an SEC title game undefeated, lost to Alabama, and then been waving its arm to say, we went undefeated in the regular season. Our only loss was a close loss in the conference title game to Alabama. So there's a number of factors involved, but to address it, yes, a second SEC team would be selected over Cincinnati if they have 1 loss. I think I saw something concerning Texas A&M shot to make the college football playoff. I addressed that several days ago. We had a Texas A&M writer on, Leah Musgrave with TexAgs.com, and I served that question up to her, just whether it was being discussed among Aggie fans, because that's something that I saw. As soon as they beat Florida, I thought, okay, they've lost to Alabama, which is no sin, but they lost in embarrassing fashion by 4 touchdowns. Had they kept it close against Alabama, they would really be in good position. But as it is, Texas A&M will most likely be favored in its final 5 games to finish out the season 9-1. They can't go to the SEC championship game, except, of course, if Alabama would lose twice. But it's not reasonable to think that Texas A&M will go to the SEC title game. Therefore, they're going to finish 9-1, and they're going to have a strong resume against any conference champion outside of Clemson or Ohio State. So put the Pac-12 champion on notice and the Big 12 as well, and Cincinnati and Boise State, that Texas A&M, if they win out, and they're probably the better team in all those games, but nobody's a pushover. South Carolina, Tennessee, LSU, Auburn, whomever I'm missing, one other team. So Texas A&M could trip up against any of those teams. All right, we're going to get Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama on the line. Nicholas is asking us, Mark, can you put a Michigan State helmet up if we beat Ohio State this year? I will put up a Michigan State helmet if they beat Ohio State this year and somebody sends me a Michigan State helmet. Or, you know what? Regardless of what happens to any Michigan State game, if somebody sends me a Michigan State helmet, I will put it up. All right. Also, 503 JM is asking, Mark, break down Oregon's shot at the college football playoffs if we go 7-0. Well, I think that's what the Pac-12 champion needs to do, is go 7-0. So I don't have Oregon's schedule up here, but that's going to include wins over, of course, a Pac-12 South winner in the championship game. Let's look at Oregon's schedule. Again, also understand that when you ask these questions about a college football playoff scenario, you really need to lay out the entire country. Because none of this is selected in a vacuum. It's based on what else is going on in the country. So, Oregon, and we can only speculate how good these teams are going to be, but their schedule right now includes, of course, just the 6 games. Stanford's not considered good right now. Washington State is not. UCLA is not. Oregon State is not. Cal is not. Washington and Cal are the 2 best teams on the schedule. And then they would play either USC, Arizona State, or Utah in a Pac-12 championship game. So Oregon, most likely the Pac-12 champion, needs to go undefeated. And they need the Big 12 champion to have 2 losses. Because what's going to happen is that, let's say, Ohio State goes undefeated or only has 1 loss. Clemson, Alabama, the same thing. Those 3 teams are in, let's say. A Big 12 winner with 1 loss is going to be 9-1 versus Oregon's 7-0. And then we're really making comparisons. But I would select a Pac-12 champion undefeated over a Big 12 champion undefeated. But if the Big 12 champions got 1 loss and the Pac-12 champion has 1 loss, then the Big 12 champion is going to get selected based on having a better record, 9-1. Actually, with the next game, they're going to be 10-1 versus 7-0. So you need to go undefeated. The Big 12 champions can have a loss. They already all have a loss, so you're in good shape there. All right. So let's talk to Stephen Smith for Touchdown Alabama. I did have the SEC schedule pulled up here a second ago. Wanted to run this down real quick because we've got a shortened schedule this week with no Alabama LSU in play. And we actually only have 8 teams playing this week. So we've got no Alabama LSU, no Ole Miss, no Missouri, no Kentucky. Somebody else is missing. All right, Florida, Georgia, 3:30 CBS. Vandy, Mississippi State, the most forgettable game of the conference season. Who's going to watch that game at 3:30 on ESPN's SEC network? Could be a good game, could be a blowout. I'm going to say a comfortable win for Texas A&M, most likely at South Carolina. Primetime game, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, ESPN, and Tennessee, Arkansas. That should be an entertaining game. At Arkansas, 7:30 SEC network. All right. Let's call up Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. Hear what he's got for us. Got to call Stephen on the phone.
Hello?
Stephen, it's Mark Rogers TV. How you doing?
Doing good, and yourself?
We are doing just fine. What's going on tonight?
Doing good. Just finished the show, but excited to come on here to talk about Bama getting through this bye week, preparing for LSU.
Absolutely. So we appreciate you stopping by for our SEC show on Wednesday night, Stephen. Everybody join Stephen at touchdownalabama.com and also here on YouTube. So listening to Nick Saban this week and players, what stands out as a storyline going into this bye weekend, and then LSU?
Well, first and foremost, Mark, it's just Coach Saban, Alabama, getting players healthy. They had a couple of guys banged up, nicked up there against Mississippi State on last week. Brian Robinson, a little nicked up. Miller Forrestall, Marcus Banks, the backup corner, did not play because of a hamstring. Bonarian Mathis got a little bit nicked up. Malachi Moore had a stinger in his right leg. He's okay. This was probably the third or fourth straight game where he did not have LeBron Ray. He's been battling with an elbow issue. So he's trying to get some guys, primarily some of your main contributing guys, back healthy, well rested, so they can go next week against the Tigers in Baton Rouge. So the main thing Coach Saban is trying to do is get a lot of these guys healthy. Get them to practice absolutely this week. It's bound to practice a little bit this week, but get them healthy first and foremost.
Yeah, so as we look at Alabama right now, what are your assessments of that midterm grade, that middle of the season grade? If you'd go unit by unit, where are the pluses? And I'm sure there are so many more pluses than minuses, and maybe a few units that could upgrade a little bit here in the second half.
Well, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, as far as the quarterbacks are concerned, that's an A+ for this group. Not many people thought that Mac Jones would perform the way he's performing this season under the guidance of Steve Sarkisian, calling the plays. The marriage of Sark with Mac Jones has been phenomenal so far this year. Yes, of course, there have been some moments early in games where Mac has dealt with a little frustration, but his ability to kind of put that behind him and keep playing has been outstanding. So definitely an A to A+ where the quarterbacks are concerned. And A for the running backs. Najee Harris had a great year running the football. He decided to come back for his senior year. He's got 714 yards rushing. He leads the SEC and the nation with 14 rushing touchdowns. He's averaging 119 yards per game. He's got 3 100-yard games this year, including one 200-yard performance against Ole Miss. And while Brian Robinson a bit banged up, he has shown some good moments. Fans were very happy to see Trey Sanders, the former 5-star from IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida last week. He got in the game, did very well, especially in the second half. 12 carries for 80 yards, ripped up a 25-yard run and a 21-yard run, showing that speed there. So an A for the running back room. For the offensive line, this has been a big-time group. An A for this, an A+ for this group right here. Probably the only slight issue is a couple of pre-snap penalties, a couple of false starts there on the 9, but the job that Evan Neal and Alex Netherwood and Deontay Brown and Landon Dickerson sort of anchoring this group at center has been fantastic. They've only given up 8 sacks this season of Mac Jones. They've been able to have that balance with Jones, 366 passing yards per game. Najee Harris, 119 rushing yards per game. Alabama with this front line, scoring 47.2 points and averaging a little bit over, averaging 555 yards offensively. Both of those statistics among the tops there in the nation, top 3 in the nation. Both of those number 1 in the SEC. And the play of Emil Ekiyor has actually been really good for this group because coming into the season, Alabama had 4 returning starters, but there was an opening there at right tackle after it lost Jedrick Wills to the NFL draft. And while Ekiyor thought he would end up playing right tackle, the ability to transition Evan Neal to right tackle and have Ekiyor at right guard has really worked out well for the offensive line. So an A+ for that group. The wide receiver room has been insane this year. Very good room right there. And even with the injury, unfortunately, to Jalen Waddle, we have seen with Devontae Smith is capable of, a guy that can do it all. John Mechie has grown before our eyes this season. Slade Bolden has an opportunity to really kind of emerge and step his own game up. And then you're looking at the possibility of maybe a Javon Baker the four-star freshman from McEachern High School in Powder Springs, Georgia, doing some things down the stretch. So even with the injury to Waddle, an A for the receivers as well, tight end group has been pretty solid, especially with Miller Forrestal being involved. Now, overall defensively, I would give this group kind of on the C+, B- range defensively. They have made some improvements since the Ole Miss game. I don't know what was said in the team meeting following that game, Mark, but they have made some improvement. We're seeing the pass rush get better. We're seeing the play in the secondary get a little bit better. It's got to continue at the safety position improvement, but we're seeing a better pass rush. We're seeing better tackling. We're seeing some improvement there in the secondary as well in terms of the safety spot. But probably about C+, B- there from the defense. In terms of special teams, where the field goal kicking is concerned, an A+ for Will Riker. I mean, for the first time in quite some time, Alabama fans, they're not having to chant or use swear words or drink themselves into oblivion, just finding different ways to cope with not having the kicking game they would like to have. But seeing Will Riker, the confidence he played with, finally healthy, mentally locked in, has been perfect on field goals, 8 for 8, has made all 37 extra points, so an A+ for him in the kicking game. The punting game, I'm giving that a D right now. The punting game has not been what Alabama has been wanting so far. It's looked at Charlie Scott. It's looked at Sam Johnson. They're not getting the type of production that they need. The punting aspect, I would like to see more of Ty Perine on the field. He has not played the season through 6 games after making the All-SEC freshman team a season ago as a walk-on, averaged 44.7 yards per punt. So I would like to see more of Ty Perine on the field. But aside from the special teams game, other aspects, where the punting is concerned, other aspects of Alabama football starting to come into play here, especially with the defense improving.
LSU's a mess right now, as you've noticed. A big 48-11 loss on the Plains last week after they had shown that they might be righting the ship against South Carolina the previous week, but they got 2 young quarterbacks playing between TJ Finley and Max Johnson. Any thought here, and this is speculative, Stephen, that considering what LSU accomplished last year, an undefeated national championship, a win head-to-head against Alabama, taking the division, the conference, and the national crown away from a program that sees it as theirs, do you think there will be any extra incentive for Alabama to kick LSU while they're down?
Most definitely. I mean, this is a game that needs no added motivation. Alabama saw what happened last year in that matchup. This is a game that needs no added motivation. Of course, today in Ogeron of LSU and the SEC coaches teleconference, when he was asked a question about how do you keep your players engaged during this time, the Tigers are 2-3, and Coach O basically said, "Hey, I mean, we got Alabama coming up. That's our biggest rival. I don't say anything else." So Alabama knows there's no added motivation needed. This was a team that you lost to last year at home inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. You got a chance to go to Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge to get that revenge there. So, for Alabama, it's been focused on getting some players that were nicked up back healthy, but at the same time, having that focus on LSU, knowing that, Coach Saban is not going to have to really say anything. The coaching staff's not going to really have to say anything because that loss from last year is playing on the minds of everybody in that room.
Stephen M. Smith of TouchdownAlabama.com. Please join him right there. The rest of the crew covering Alabama as the Tide makes a stretch drive toward an SEC crown. Steve, once again for the folks, so what are the days and times for the live show that they can catch right here on YouTube?
Absolutely. The days and times, it's every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. So 6 Central Time every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
All right, Stephen. Enjoy the weekend off per se, and enjoy the football.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you.
Our guy, Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama, another SEC Live. We want to remind all of you that we've got content posted constantly. Content coming your way every morning at 5 a.m. I post a new video at 5 a.m., typically another one at noon, and then at 5 p.m., and then possibly in the evening around 8 o'clock Eastern time, depending on our live schedule. So if we've got live streams and call-in shows, I don't want to be releasing videos at the same time. So we try to keep a post for 5 a.m. Eastern time, noon, sometime mid to late afternoon, around 4 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time, and then in the evening as well. We're looking at, my goodness, Texas, Miami, North Carolina State, Arizona State, USC, Georgia, Florida, Clemson, Notre Dame, on across the board, Ohio State, of course, Nebraska, and Michigan State. We've talked to so many bloggers and broadcasters, and analysis from myself coming out in the next few days to get you all set for Saturday. Back here live at 6 o'clock Eastern time on Thursday with our Nebraska live show, with unfortunately the Huskers and the Wisconsin Badgers game. And now, let's see, the Wisconsin Purdue game has been canceled, but Nebraska will be back on the field against 2-0 Northwestern. So we will have much to talk about on the Nebraska football front tomorrow night, Thursday night. Let's get it up here, 6 o'clock Eastern time. We would like to have you all back for our Nebraska live show. Again, that's going to be tomorrow night, Thursday night, our second Nebraska live show, 6 o'clock Eastern time. And as you can tell from these live streams, we bring in college football fans from every fan base all over the country, all over the map, regardless of what team we are focused on. If you would like to have a specific team, your team, featured with a team-specific 1-hour live stream each and every week, similar to what we deliver with Nebraska, Ohio State, Florida State, and Miami, then please get us a sponsor. That's how Nebraska Live was launched. Somebody went out there, they got a sponsor. They said, Mark, I want you to do a Nebraska show. And I said, absolutely, I'll do any show. And they said, I'm going to get you a sponsor. And I said, absolutely. So here we are doing Nebraska football every Thursday night at 6 o'clock Eastern time. That's what's going to make this happen. Join us on Patreon, My Predictions, Insider Look, Steve Merrill, Pro Sports Info with his Lock of the Week. You get an exclusive live stream per request. And we also have watch parties as we did last Friday night. On Patreon, it's only $5 a month. That's 15 cents a day to help us build the channel. Also, as you can see on the crawl below, shop Amazon. Use the link in the description section. Helps us build the channel again. It's the same exact experience for you on Amazon. So please put the link somewhere where you can find it. And just use the link when you shop on Amazon, and it helps us build the channel. Head on over to the Miami channel. We've got a lot of good content there. So this looks to be the schedule tomorrow night. 4 p.m. Eastern time, the Wholesome One and Miami Live, 6 o'clock Eastern, Nebraska Live, and then back with Cam Underwood at 7 o'clock Eastern time with another Miami Live show right here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Keep it locked in. Tons of good video content coming. I am working on a piece right now where I am comparing SEC recruiting rankings versus record and significant wins, making a complete analysis of SEC football during the college football playoff era. So be looking out for that video as well. Let's take one more look at the live chat. Gator George, of course, could sponsor something. Yes, he could. Be fun to have a Florida Gator show, huh? That would be phenomenal. George, Mark needs a national company as a sponsor because he talks about football teams from every region of the country. I would think that, and this is something I'm going to devote myself to very soon, and I really need to very soon because money's going to make this thing happen. is I need to become a salesman, which that's the last thing I want to do is be a salesman. But that's what I'm going to have to do is look up companies, contact them, make a sales pitch, show them what we do, what we got, and hopefully they'll respond. Or maybe I'll get a salesperson. So if anybody out there wants to make 15% commission, or maybe we can work out something else, then certainly contact me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. If anybody's got great ideas, suggestions, requests, anything, questions about the channel, anything, you can always contact me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. And finally, we will recognize the best moderator in college football. Cheryl has been doing this basically by her lonesome for the most part. There's been a few other people join in from time to time. So we've got about 7 moderators, I believe. But when it comes to mods, Cheryl has been it. Exactly, Cheryl. Cheryl saying, where is everybody? We've got 7 or 8. So if you would like to be a mod, I know that we got a request from Jordan Bowman as well. So Jordan, will get you on board as a mod as well. Alabama football fan, Roll Tide. This is the first time I've seen your name here in the live chat. So welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I can see that you roll with the Tide. Thank you so much for the compliment there. Awesome show as usual. Roll Tide. Also, to add to the list, every Sunday at 6, every Friday at 6. Those are Eastern time. Monday and Friday at 6. I'm over at SD1 College Football with a live call-in show there as well. All right, everyone. Great to see you. Have a great night. We will see you soon back here on Thursday with all sorts of content. And we go live at 4, 6, and 7. See you then.